And welcome to the Transportation Committee meeting of Wednesday, March 27th. I'm Mike Vaughn, I'm the chair, joined by my colleague, Nuri Martinez. I believe Mr. Koretz should be with us shortly. We've got a lot of stuff on the agenda today and a big crowd, so we will get right to it. I'm going to start with the speakers who have multiple cards. Mr. Previn, you can come up first, followed by sock puppet guy. You have 2 minutes for the items on the agenda, then 1 minute for general public comment.
Okay, thank you. Well, I take note of a number of parking restriction items, and we are in a homeless crisis, and you've heard me talk about this before, and I'm concerned. I think that we do have to be able to enforce in some way, but I take note that Greg Smith and Joe Buscaino have posted a motion today to oppose a measure called AB 516 by Mr. Chu, C-H-I-U, that would make it essentially, Mr. Chu is trying to relax the attack on people who get 5 citations, because if you get 5 citations, the rule is you can be towed.
Which item are you speaking to?
I'm speaking on the numerous items about restrictions on parking that will result in a tow if you get 5 citations.
Got it.
So I just think that this council, we've been playing the dance with 8502 over and over again, and I just think that we should be leaning in the other direction, which is to find a way to provide places where people can actually rest peacefully if they're experiencing homelessness in their vehicle. It's not, a crime. It is a crime. Some things are a crime, but that's not one of them. And I just feel that that's incredibly important, and that we should not support such a motion by Mr. Smith and Mr. Buscaino, who do not set the tone for the entire city. They just made that proposal. It hasn't been voted on, but I support Mr. Chu's motion to relax the attacks. That said, there's also a preferential parking district. I was discussing it with one of the city attorneys today. It's confusing. Evidently, a reduction in parking to a project exempts or makes possible preferential parking districts, as to refresh your memory, are where you pay for a card, and then you, as a resident in the area, can park on the street, and others will be cited and towed if they violate the restrictions. This speaks to development, but it's confusing on its face, so I would ask that that be explained. And for my general public comment, I will just simply say that I continue to await a reasonable apology for what happened at the last transportation meeting, or a recent transportation meeting, where there was a deflavorization effort by the chair to announce that speakers would be engaging in hate speech, which of course I never engage in, as everybody knows. But Joe, whatever his name is, from Streets Blogs, mistook me for someone who had engaged in hate speech at a meeting the following day, and accused me of being a racist right in my face, which was appalling and hurtful to me and my family. He subsequently apologized. And the practice of sticking silly earplugs up has been removed, evidently, for today. But I would like an apology from this body, because I don't have much, but I do have my reputation. And when it is besmirched by seated leaders of our great city, it sends a message that criticism and content and comment is only what we want to hear, and we don't want to hear from people who are critical. And I think that's inappropriate and hurtful. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Previn. For the record, I'll note that Mr. Koretz has arrived. I'll also note, on a personal note, I've never heard Mr. Previn engage in racist comments or hate speech. I should warn the audience I can't say the same about some of the other people who fill out multiple public comment cards. Mr. Spindler, you have 2 minutes for multiple comments and a minute for general public comment.
All right, go ahead. So we turn our attentions to number 6. Yes, sir. Now, we're both here to oppose this horrible, horrible thing on number 6. Now, as you know, we have many people, including a nice lady that's a deputy counsel for the Immigration Service, that uses a disabled placard and parks on Temple Street across from the Federal Building every fucking day, making $190,000 a year. She gets free parking. with a disabled placard that's not hers, it's actually her mother's. And we are opposed to number 6. Federal employees do a good job, and federal employees should be able to misuse any placard they want and park free forever. That's right. And that goes for city and county employees as well. We encourage all of you to get free parking. Go ahead, use your brother's placard, your mother's placard, and one of the relatives occasionally dies. And you can go down to the DMV office, and there's a nice lady down there by Washington Boulevard. For $100, she'll give you not one, but 2 duplicate placards so that you can sell one for $400, $500 and get free parking. This was all the brainchild of Nuri Martinez, and we thank her very much for all of this because she's allowing all of us to get free parking one day. Yay! And that's why, fuck number 6. And we don't like Koretz, and we don't like Bonin, these white privileged assholes taking away our ghetto-free parking style privileges. There's one thing that we don't like, is white people telling us black and brown people what to do. We want Nuri to be the chair of this committee. Yes, sir. And for the general comment. Yes, for the general comment, we'll be tomorrow, 9:30 at the Metro Board. And at the Metropolitan Board, you will see Mike Bonin along with Paul Koretz and our mayor. And they'll sit there, and you know what they'll do? No. They'll shut the fuck up and let Sheila Kuehl and let the goddamn proceedings commence because, you see, our members don't ever say anything at the Metro Board. We lose millions and millions of dollars because Mike Bonin won't stand up to Sheila Kuehl, and the mayor will not stand up to Janice Hahn, and of course, our third member, Bonin, stands up to nobody. And Hilda Sully scared the shit out of him one time when she took $200,000 for a bench stop. So watch these 3 wannabes get their asses kicked while the other cities get money. It's very fun. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just for the record, in case anybody has the wrong impression, I'm not on the Metro Board.
Shocking that there was incorrect information in that presentation.
For the record, I'm not interested in chairing.
Damn.
Thank you. You're doing a fine job.
Oh, well. Okay, so we have one other speaker for general public comment. Audra Karim? No? Okay. Okay, all right. Your name is not here. All right, so that concludes general public comment and the multiple speaker items. So, Mr. Herman, please be quiet. It's your last warning. Colleagues, I would recommend then that we approve items 2 through 9 on consent, unless there are any questions or objections.
Fuck him.
Okay.
No, fuck you. You're supposed to warn me first. Don't treat me like
What's the warning?
Shit, you fucking white transportation.
I did warn you, and that was your only warning. Now you're out.
I'm leaving, but you're a fucking dick. You're a fucking cocksucker, faggot, high school college, stupid motherfucker. That's what you are. Fuck you fucking gay motherfucker. Telling me shit. Fucking asshole. Get your story straight. You're gonna warn people, warn them right. Fucking pussy. You're a fucking pussy. You come out of the closet, you fucking drug addict. I'll see you at Metro tomorrow, you fucking nigger. Fuck him.
Okay, moving on.
Mr. Chair, for item number 5, there's a, if you could approve that as amended to reflect the typo in the second paragraph of the resolution.
I can't hear you.
Item number 5, there's a typo in the second paragraph, so if you could approve that as amended to reflect that change. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just 1 second to update this. All right, we'll go then to item number 1, which is the Journal Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Transportation Committee. Today is the same thing that we really enjoy the opportunity to do once a month at this committee, which is to recognize some outstanding people from LADOT, which I think is a great palate cleanser after the performance we all just witnessed. And so, without further ado, I'm going to start with, please stand up when I call your name, from Administration and Field Services, Paul Weinberg. Paul is LADOT's Emergency Management Coordinator, and he has been instrumental in assuring that LADOT is prepared to respond to emergencies. In his 14 months with LADOT, Paul has successfully coordinated LADOT's emergency responses involving Woolsey Creek, Portola, and Skirball fires, and multiple apartment evacuations from fires and hazardous materials incidents. In addition, he's also worked daily with the city's UHRC, Unified Homeless Response Center, since March of 2018 in order to coordinate the department's diverse contributions within our city partners, addressing the homelessness crisis through coordinated cleanups, traffic control assistance, signposting, and outreach efforts. Paul also represents the city as a facilitator as part of Los Angeles Fleet Week 2018, in which he formed a working group and led a discussion of high-level local, county, state, federal, and military experts, which covered debris removal and route reopenings following a significant earthquake in Los Angeles. His calm, focused, and professional demeanor have served him well as he navigates the city's complex emergency management network. Paul has used tact and diplomacy to ensure LADOT is able to efficiently connect and collaborate with other city departments, government and private agencies to remain resilient and to keep moving Los Angeles forward. Thank you, Paul. Next, from Transportation Technology, Jose Elias. Jose is a member of LADOT's Bureau of Transportation Technology, and he oversees the city's Metro Bike Share Partnership and the city's new dockless mobility pilot program. Jose started as a student intern at LADOT, working on the city's bike rack program. On completing his studies, Jose worked as a planner for LA County and then for LA City Planning before coming back home to LADOT to oversee the Metro Bike Share program. Jose has also been instrumental to the launch of the on-demand dockless mobility pilot program. Although it's an all-hands-on-deck affair, Jose has been responsible for coordinating the review and compliance of all the applications received for the program. In addition, Jose has spearheaded the design, production, and installation of scooter parking vinyl decals, as well as coordinating with ITA to integrate the 311 app to field scooter service requests. Jose is a fantastic program manager, well-liked by his colleagues, and displays a calm demeanor at all times, and in particular when under pressure. One example of this is when an ailing Jose helped the LADOT Dodgers softball team break a losing streak by hitting the first out-of-the-park home run of the season. Thank you, Jose. Next, from Mobility Management, Luz Echeverria, Nora Chin, Bruce Fluellen, and Jasmine Nunez. Finally, we say thanks to the LA Now team. Last month, the LADOT Specialized Transit Team launched LA Now, the city's new pilot on-demand shared ride service. Now you can hail a ride through the LA Now smartphone app, online or by phone, and get picked up or dropped off only a few blocks from your destination. This service was born from LADOT's technical service analysis and from deep champions in the community and in the council district. And from the West Side residents who need and will use the service in Del Rey, Venice, Mar Vista, and the Palms neighborhoods. Over the past 18 months, the LA Now team worked tirelessly to develop the program. They planned and attended countless community meetings, completed resident surveys, and invested in relationships with future riders. Their day-to-day interactions form the software that technical developers created to implement this new transit option for the community. We would like to acknowledge their hard work and success in rolling out LA Now. Please join me in congratulating them and all of our outstanding performers to their commitment to LADOT's vision and mission.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for acknowledging all the great work from your staff. I want to give a shout out to them, but I also want to give a shout out to some staff who aren't here, because I know that there are a lot of members of your department that were busting their tails all weekend long for the marathon, and I think they deserve a shout out as well. Hopefully we'll be able to recognize them at a future meeting. I want to thank really everybody, but I want to give an acknowledgement to the team that helped launch LA Now. I hope you were able to be there at the launch at Mar Vista Gardens, where Mr. Koretz and Ms. Reynolds were. The genesis of this is older than it should be. It goes back over a decade from people who are transit dependent, who live in Mar Vista Gardens housing complex, who have no other way to get to take their kid to school, or no other way to go to the doctor, or no other way to go shopping. And they have been eager and hungry for a transit option for well over a generation. And while this serves a larger circle, it gets them where they need to go. And it was important for me that we got to deliver on that promise and got to deliver there, right at the place where the people who initiated the idea generated it. And to see the looks on their faces that day and to hear the comments from them, it really showed that we were delivering something that people needed, and I was really glad for that. Which is not to say I do not have a long punch list of things about the pilot we need to.
Your punch list is noted, council member.
It continues to grow every time I write it, but
Keep them coming.
that's all good. So thank you for that. I should also note, since you mentioned, I think it was softball. You have a star softball player there. You know, if you ever need an additional player, Mr. Koretz, who's on this committee and therefore I think qualifies, is little known a softball champ. He's also really good at bowling.
Excellent.
But if you ever need a ringer to call in.
Together well.
No, but if you ever need a ringer, call him in.
Nice. Well, that's good. Means opening day is tomorrow for us all to get fired up.
Cool. Any questions or comments? Okay, great.
Thank
you very much. Is Patrick Frank here? Mr. Frank, you were here at item 5. Your thing didn't pop up until after we approved the item. It's already been approved. Are you good? Okay. All right. Cool. Sounds good. Okay. So given that the bulk of the audience is here on item number 12, we will skip ahead to item number 12.
Item number 12 was continued from the February 13, 2019 meeting. It is a Blumenfield-Harris-Dawson motion requesting City Attorney to prepare an ordinance to repeal Taxicab Board Rule 415C regarding digital rooftop advertising on taxicabs.
Okay. Let's start with the public comment then on this. I'll start with Mr. Frank, Sam Saletta, Fred Arak, and Ronnie Garcia.
My name is Patrick Frank. I represent the Coalition to Ban Billboard Blight, a nonprofit volunteer organization. We enthusiastically support the motion that's been offered. We believe that flashing signs on top of passenger vehicles have numerous problems. Some of these are as follows. First, our transportation environment is already heavily burdened by advertising. I don't know if you noticed. We have ads on bench backs, we have ads on shelters, kiosks, buses, not to mention thousands of billboards. This will add a further layer of distraction to burdened drivers already burdened. 2, this is a measure that's probably illegal under state law. We support the city attorney's reasoning on this point. Third, these digital signs, if they're allowed to go ahead, will appear in every neighborhood, including the most tranquil, so it will disturb the neighborhood character of residential neighborhoods everywhere in the city. And then finally, the CHP has stated that this will impact the recognizability of emergency vehicles. So we want to enforce the law, reduce visual blight, and promote traffic safety. We're in support. It's a no-brainer for us. Should be for you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Sam Saletta, Fred Arak, Ronnie Garcia, Maria Gonzalez. You can all come up at the same time if you'd like.
Hello. Thanks for hearing us out today. We're drivers with Firefly.
Are you Sam?
I'm Sam Saletta, yes. I'm not sure if you guys know what it's like to be a rideshare driver. I don't know why you would, but it's tough. Living paycheck to paycheck is an understatement of what it's really like. And the income that Firefly gives to us really helps. Not only just have a little more to pay bills, but also to have a little more time, like that I get to spend with my son and things like that. It means a lot. That's why a lot of the drivers have showed up today for this meeting. All I have to say is that, you know, don't take money out of our pockets just for aesthetic purposes. The safety argument, I don't think it holds much water. I mean, places like New York already have signs like these. I'll give the rest of my time up. Thanks.
If you could start by identifying yourself.
Yeah, I'm Ronnie Garcia. I'm driving for Uber, and then I have this opportunity to drive with Firefly. So I was saying she almost covered everything, and I was kind of frustrated because someone here in the city is trying to ban the good opportunity for us to earn effortless, knowing living in the city is hard enough. You know, paycheck. It will significantly impact me because I have a lot on my shoulders right now, and I'm not even asking the city for it. I'm paying apartment, car bills, and child support, healthcare. So just imagining all those burdens. I'm not sure what's the reason behind it, but as I heard, it's more of a aesthetic thing. And I don't think advertisement from this kind of a firm or company will do significantly because it's so little for it to do. There's a lot more things like metro buses, billboards, and digital downtown LA. That's what we could focus more on rather than this small advertisement. So I hope the city would think about how they could help us instead of taking away something that's actually helping us.
Thank you, sir.
And
time's up.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. My name's Fred Arick. I'm a veteran of the Second World War, and I'm here now to save my self-respect. I earn a living by having that sign. It allows me to keep my respect and pay my bills. By the way, as I pay these bills, a good portion of it goes to city taxes and state taxes, which keeps other firms and social work done. At the same time, the people I buy things from can hire more people and make money for themselves, and again, make taxes. And this is a way that I can keep my self-respect at my age without having to beg. As my Social Security goes up, $32 a month, my rent went up at the same time for $78. This is a way I keep my own self-respect and provide extra money to the city and state coffers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Gonzalez. As they said, I'm also a driver for Firefly. I really depend on this extra income for myself. I am the household of my house. I am a single mom with 2 daughters, and I drive with various platforms. And usually I would have to work and get back until late hours at night. But ever since I got with Firefly, I minimize that time. And by minimizing that time, I also reduced my babysitting charges. So this has been more than a blessing to my family and myself, and I would really plead you guys to really look over everything before making a grand decision on this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next 4 speakers are, thank you all, Walter Rivera, Pete Gould, Lalo Lopez, and Gregory Stock. Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, my name is Walter Arnoldo Arias Rivera. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm here to show support to this company because, like my friend said here before, it's a good and a big help for us. I am a father. My wife, thanks God, we just had our baby boy. He's 6 months already, but he was premature, and my wife had to take care of him. So I'm the only one who supports family right now. And you know how in these days we have to struggle and work hard to get enough income to cover our budget. So in my situation, I'm the only one who supports my home. And my wife had to quit because we have to take care of a baby. Like I said, he's premature and there's nothing who's going to take care of him better than my wife. So this income helps a lot because like they said, I have 3 jobs to do that. So please think about it.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez?
My name's Lalo Lopez, and I work with Firefly. And it feels strange being here discussing a motion to take away drivers' incomes. I say this right now because outside of this committee room and across LA, taxi and rideshare drivers are both facing a scary economic hardship and anxieties with the way they're being paid. Imagine the week that a driver would be having if this motion passes. They have to take the $300 per month away from these drivers that they relied upon, while also learning about a 25% pay cut that Uber did overnight. For drivers and their family, this would be catastrophic because they were already barely getting by financially, as you've heard from our speakers before. And taxi drivers are facing an upcoming crisis due to the LAX construction that's going on that was giving them the slight advantage over rideshare vehicles because they would have been there first. They're already facing this disruptive shock after another, and they just keep facing these after the last 7 years that these rideshare companies have been coming out as well. And this would be the last straw.
Thank you. Mr. Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Pete Gould with Firefly. Since we last spoke with the committee, there is an emerging consensus that we can and should be moving away from a ban that is seen in this motion and toward a pilot program for developing sensible regulations that both enable innovation and boost driver income while ensuring the devices are safe. This approach has now had voice support from LADOT, the Taxi Commission, the Los Angeles Police Protective League, the taxi industry, and Firefly. Now we are respectfully asking this committee for its support too. We support this approach and urge the committee to seek input from all sides on how best to structure such a pilot. We have heard much hyperbole about what would happen if our displays aren't banned immediately. However, Firefly has been operating in Los Angeles for close to a year without these horror stories coming to bear. We've proactively conducted independent safety and compliance testing and have conducted ourselves as trusted members of the community, and we will continue to do so in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stock?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Gregory Stock with Firefly. I don't need to tell this committee that taxi drivers in LA are hurting and that matters are only getting more dire. Even before the arrival of Uber and Lyft, taxi drivers were reported to earn just $8.63 per hour and were working an average of 72 hours per week. Since the arrival of TNCs in 2012, it's been reported that taxi trips have declined by more than 30%, with taxis increasingly relying on trips from LAX as the one dependable source of trips and income. But later this summer, LAX will commence a massive multi-year construction and renovation project that is likely to force taxis to move from their current curbside terminal lines out to a remote staging lot alongside the TNCs. This move will eliminate the one remaining advantage that taxis have over TNCs and threatens the industry with extinction. When that time comes, they will ask what the city council did or did not do to protect them. And if this motion were to pass today, their answer would be obvious. Please do the right thing. Protect taxi drivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next 4 speakers are Alec Melroy, Jaime Suarez, Kendall Asuncion, and Andre Minosian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Alec Melroy with Firefly. While the situation for taxi drivers has been addressed by my colleagues, rideshare drivers are not faring much better themselves. The UCLA Labor Center released a survey of LA rideshare drivers in which 44% of drivers reported having difficulty paying expenses like gas, insurance, and maintenance, and found that many drivers are sleeping and eating in their cars between trips and even living in their vehicles overnight. Now rideshare drivers in LA are facing another cut to their rates, down from 80 cents to 60 cents per mile, and that's only while they have a passenger. On Monday, they launched a strike because they cannot afford to live in such expensive city at these rates. Banning rooftop advertising as this motion asks you to do, prevents rideshare drivers from diversifying their income streams and places them solely at the mercy of pre-IPO rate cut wars. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Jaime Suarez. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not only does Firefly work directly with drivers to boost their incomes, we are doing so with drivers that live in many of the most economical disadvantaged neighborhoods in the region. We can do an analysis or current drivers and those or waiting lists to demonstrate to the community what neighborhoods will be hurt the most if this ban were passed. Of the top 25 zip codes in which our drivers reside, we found that these neighborhoods have a median income that is 25% below in the city wide level, a higher population of foreign-born and immigrant residents, and a 66% higher African American share of the population that enters city, 15 African American compared to 8.9 for the city. We have also provided to the community members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Kendall Ascension. I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce to express its opposition to item 12, a ban on digital rooftop advertising for taxis and rideshare drivers. Drivers in the rideshare community have already partnered with Firefly to supplement their income without working additional hours. However, taxi drivers are denied the same opportunity despite the similarity of their work, which is inherently unfair. Furthermore, digital rooftop advertising is an innovative technology that is part of the future of communication. It allows local businesses to advertise throughout the region and generate more brand awareness. As well, Firefly provides a minimum 10% advertising space to local community groups and nonprofits to share valuable information. At this time, pursuing a ban on digital rooftop advertising would reduce income levels of those already in partnership with Firefly and diminish the future of this innovative communication technology. As such, we urge you to oppose the motion and appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Very much.
Hello. So my name is Andre. I used to manage independent taxi company, and now when I'm not attending political roasts with Mitchell Ferros, I drive taxi. So there's chances you might be seeing me picking you up at LAX. So, but while I've been in office, I've been requesting LADOT to schedule an inspection for taxis, and I was never granted. So in my, so just asking you to look over it, if there's something you can do to help drivers to gain an extra income. Just to remind, taxis have been always having a top light signs. They've been always advertising, especially that's something that taxis do. And if you go anywhere, New York, Vegas, that's what taxis are. And we have commercial license plates. We are a little bit different regulation than the regular cars. So I think this is our right to have it. Please grant it to us. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next three speakers, final three speakers are Vladimir Betsis, Armando Flores, and Vladimir Sarkeesian.
Hi. My name is Vladimir Betsis. I'm the independent owner-operator of the taxi cab 1057 Aitova. I'm working in the taxi cab almost 30 years. Today we are suffering a lot. I have to work myself instead of 8 hours like I working before, from 12 to 15 hours to make some living. I ask you to consider this to help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Vladimir Sarkeesian, and my point is, with that money, which one can be like $300 a month, can I help us to reduce our payments? That's not only about our payments, that's about the industry. You're going to keep the industry in the streets, on the streets, because it's not possible to make additional $1,500 to somebody, which one including insurance, all those things. Then the rest is it's no money that much out of streets, It's no passengers, no business anymore. So don't make people to suicide like it's happened in New York. There's nine people already. Okay, if you've done the same thing to continue here, so please help us. And that wasn't democracy right there, that guy using F4. Democracy here behind you, okay, to help us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Armando Flores with the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, VICA. We're here to oppose the motion and to oppose placing a ban on digital rooftop advertising on rideshare vehicles. The City of LA has made a coordinated and focused effort to encourage and welcome new innovations and technologies to our city as they bring jobs and spur economic growth. Digital rooftop advertising contributes to this commitment by connecting businesses with consumers through the use of innovative technology. This type of advertising offers local businesses an innovative model of promoting their product or services to consumers throughout Los Angeles. Small-scale digital advertising allows small businesses to reach a very diverse audience in neighborhoods that are typically hard to reach while remaining within their budget. The proposed ban will negatively impact communities, benefiting from the increased economic activity generated by consumers who have supported local businesses. We urge you to oppose the motion and to enact a sensible policy that ensures public safety and ensures businesses thrive using the advancement of technology arriving to our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes public comment on this. If staff could come up to the table. Let me thank everybody who, while staff is coming up, I want to thank everybody who came out to testify today, the workers, the drivers for Uber, for Lyft, for the taxis. Certainly heard your messages. Was glad that there were folks here from organizations testifying out of concern for the low level of income and the tough working conditions of the drivers for both of those companies. I trust that those organizations and those individuals who are not drivers were active participants in the Day of Action yesterday with Rideshare Drivers United and Gig Workers Rising, standing up for the workers. And I was really glad to see that a couple organizations that were vigorous opponents of a minimum wage increase in Los Angeles are here testifying on behalf of low-wage workers. That's very good to see. Glad you've got some religion. Look forward to having you join us on some other efforts to stand up for workers.
Parental paid leave would be nice.
Yeah. Paid sick days, all that kind of stuff.
See where they fall on that one.
Yep. Okay. So, give us a status of where we are, and if you could frame this issue for us.
Well, I'm Jarvis Murray. I'm the tax cab administrator for the Los Angeles Department of Transportation. And frankly, due to the legality of the issue surrounding this topic, the LADOT has not, frankly, taken a position on this issue. So in terms of any status, we have not reviewed any advertising. We have not reviewed any of the specs, or we've seen the specs, but we haven't reviewed them for the sake of permitting. So we haven't done anything of that sort at this time.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, we've reviewed it. It has occurred at the last meeting. Mr. Michelson went through the law with the committee. We still stand by the preemption issue that until 25-400 of the California Vehicle Code is amended to allow the dynamic message signs, which is the paging, the movement of the images on the signs, that there is no authority for us to enter into a contract or to have a pilot program because they're currently not legal. Also, under 87.54, we would have to amend that in the event that 25-400 was eventually amended to allow this type of activity. We would have to amend that to allow it either on taxis, and there's the argument that was made by Best and Krieger that Mr. Michelson went through about equal protection. Our office needs to study that in greater detail, and to look at this in greater detail, I have reviewed Firefly's privacy policy, and I've reviewed Firefly's agreements with their drivers, and there are serious legal and liability concerns if we were to implement a pilot right now. For instance, and I'll go into one issue, inspection of the installation. These are installed through the electrical system of the car to the battery. DOT doesn't have staff right now that could even inspect for that. Under their indemnity provision with their drivers, the drivers are required to indemnify Firefly for their use of and the installation of the program equipment. If we don't have a contract where we require them to indemnify us, that presents major liability for the city. If we went in and actually tried to inspect those vehicles, we took it upon ourselves to do that without staff being able to do that or even know how to do that. Also under 71.21, you're required, that's part of their requirement when they allow any type of equipment such as an installation not already covered in the LAMC, and these are not covered in the LAMC right now. There are also issues, let me see if I can find inspection, preemption, privacy. The privacy issues are also major. We are, as you're aware, I know the committee is aware that we've been working closely with the ACLU and the EFF to develop privacy requirements and protocols for the electric scooters. That would also be necessary here because the Firefly equipment does monitor the riders.
Right.
If you agree to their terms and conditions, they can track you and they can.
So bottom line is what you're saying is that the DMS, the dynamic messaging signs, are not currently legal under state law or city code.
That's correct.
And that while we certainly could explore a pilot, we would need to do a number of things in order to effectuate that, which would require some changes in city code, perhaps some change in state law to authorize that.
That's correct.
Okay. I also understand in November 2018, your office communicated with Firefly that installation and operation of its DMS devices in the city was illegal under state and city law?
David Michelson and I did meet with Firefly. It was early November. I want to say November 4th.
Okay, so they've been aware of that, the city's opinion on that for 5 months now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And the taxi commission, if maybe one of you could, when last this was before our committee a few weeks ago, the ask was please let the taxi commission consider this and weigh in on this. What did the commission consider and what did the commission recommend?
Well, the commission did listen to information about the Firefly and the product and how it works, as well as feedback from drivers and companies related to it. The commission prepared a report for, I believe, council, basically stating that potentially a pilot would be the correct way to go in order to begin taking a look at this service. They considered a limited pilot, but that's really where they were going with it, the commission.
Okay. And Mr. City Attorney, I asked this last meeting, I'll ask it again. I've been around the block on advertising regulations and digital billboards and digital advertising regulations for longer than I care to remember. Even really before there was a coalition against Billboard Blight. And I know that every time the city has tried to make rules, when the rules have been sort of loosey-goosey or they've been exception to rules, we've gotten in trouble. And then it becomes the wild, wild west of advertising anywhere and everywhere. The approach the city has been taking, and it hasn't been the fastest process in the world, has been one to come up with discrete digital advertising areas. This would effectively allow mobile roving digital advertising. Wouldn't that potentially cause a problem with the sort of foundational structure of zones?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Kretz or Ms. Martinez, either of you?
Sure. So obviously, you know, Gibson Dunn did a lengthy analysis that comes to the exact opposite conclusion. Do you have a point-by-point response to their document?
Well, Mr. Michelson did cover that, but I've also reviewed the Gibson Dunn legal document they provided to you. They completely get Lone Star versus City of Los Angeles wrong. They've conflated the two statutes in reaching their decision. For some reason, they fixated on mobile billboards, not the type that are installed on vehicles. That's a different code section. The Ninth Circuit, when they ruled on Lone Star, found that our current laws, both 87.53, which is mobile billboards, and 87.54 were reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. The court particularly cited blight that caused by those type of signs, by just just mobile billboards, not even dynamic message signs. They also took into consideration the many public safety issues involved regarding distraction, and they found that the city could do this. What Gibson Dunn did is they conflated, like I said, 87.53 with 87.54. 87.54, which Councilmember Blumenfield provided when he testified, was enacted to limit the size of advertising on vehicles. It doesn't require, the primary purpose does not have to be advertising. That's what Gibson Dunn got wrong, and the court went through it at least 10 times in the decision, differentiating between the two statutes. Gibson Dunn never differentiated between the two statutes, and therefore we don't feel that's a valid criticism. There were also other issues. They said that that the vehicle code is permissive. It's not permissive. Section 21 of the vehicle code says that where the state has occupied the field in an area, no jurisdiction, local jurisdiction, can pass any law or implement any program that would be in conflict with state law. This is in conflict with state law. State law only authorizes dynamic message signs on a current bus pilot program. Initially, it was 3 bus pilot programs. The other 2 were unsuccessful. 1 didn't launch. The other, they were so overly bright they couldn't run them at night. The third one, it drained the battery on their electric vehicles, so they've stopped running them. They're going to allow that pilot program to expire. Most of the taxis are Priuses. We don't know what the effect will be. But the state law has not authorized. They said specifically in the legislation that their intent was not to allow this on any other type of transit vehicles, including buses, until they had studied the effects of the pilots. It was slated in 2020. They will revisit this issue in 2020. Now, what council can do, if they want to go forward, is to make a legislative recommendation that they amend 25-400 to update it. It hasn't been updated since 1968. It doesn't cover any of this technology. The city attorney's office has we're not going to get into the policy issues here. We're just describing you the legal issues. And we've taken no position on the policy issue at this point.
So the fact that the legislation doesn't cover technologies that now exist, is that
they do cover
automatically illegal, or could one assume it's just not covered?
That's what Section 21 is. They specifically said their intent. You were in the legislature. You know that when they state their intent, that's their intent, that they were not going to allow this type of technology on any other vehicles. They spent it 3 different times. Each pilot program, they repeated that language until 2020, when they would study whether there were adverse effects with 3 pilot programs. What we recommend and what we've advised is until 25-400 is updated to allow this type of technology on other vehicles, we believe they are preempted. We're preempted from enacting that. That is the argument. And they did cover the technology because they specifically address it in 2 different sections. The bus pilot, they define what dynamic message is. They go through the movement. One of the important things you have to consider, and one of the reasons that they were studying the dangerousness of this, is it's not just the illumination. It's the movement of the sign. They set out specific parameters as to when they had to be changed, when they had to be static. For instance, on the freeways, they're required to be static, the buses on the freeways. Right now, I have seen several of these on the freeways where the sign just keeps going. It would be in violation of even the bus requirements for the pilots, because they are in constant movement, at least the ones that I've seen. Now, some of them are not Firefly, and that's the other issue. If you allow this, as Mr. Councilmember Bonin pointed out, then it's going to be in other zones, it's going to be in other forms. We'll see it on other vehicles. We're already seeing that.
In addition to waiting for the pilot stand in the legislature or the state to evaluate, the city could also ask the legislature to add an additional pilot that includes Los Angeles.
That's what that would be a recommendation.
Well, certainly my own experience has been, I've been told by city attorneys, including in other cities since I've been on multiple councils, that the legislature had filled the field, for instance, on a ban on Saturday night special handguns. and that we would never prevail because it was clearly precluded by state law, and yet we went up through the system and won at every level, and much to our city attorney's surprise and perhaps us, we prevailed. So it might look like it on its face and then not turn out to be the case.
Well, once again, I will point out to Section 21 of the Vehicle Code. It's much different than any other section in any other or code sections in state government. It is a preemptive, and it applies to charter cities. In this particular instance, laws are always going to change. There's no 100% guarantee at any time. You might get a bad decision. For instance, Lone Star, we lost at the district court level, but we prevailed with the Ninth Circuit, which allowed us to regulate the size of content of advertising, not the content of advertising, but both mobile billboards and advertising on vehicles. And for the reasons that we pointed out, blight, public safety issues.
Okay.
Ms. Martinez? Any questions?
Yeah, I had a few questions. So regarding current law, do we have the ability to create, so what you're saying is we don't even have the ability to create a small pilot for taxi cab drivers. You're saying we do not have that ability today?
We don't have that ability right now, absent a change in state law.
Do we have the ability to ensure that revenues generated by this type of advertisement go to the drivers rather than the actual companies?
No, we have no authority over these
We have no
companies. We
authority
don't
to do that
regulate
either.
them.
So
Right.
we could be, so some of these folks can be driving around with these type of advertising, but most of the money doesn't necessarily, the money generated off of this advertising doesn't go to them, it goes to the taxi company or the company itself?
Oh, but I don't know.
Do you know what that structure looks like?
I don't know what that structure looks like, no.
My understanding is that these are not on any taxis yet in Los Angeles. They're just on TNC cars, and that the company pays those drivers a flat rate. So it's not on a sort of per mile or per advertising. It's just if they log a certain number of hours, they get paid a flat rate.
I see. And has there, so I think I asked this question last time as well. Do we have any real sense as to whether this would be taken up by the legislature in this legislative session? Has anyone given us any indication someone's going to carry anything to amend the vehicle code?
My understanding is they've tried to do it in the past, and there wasn't
Who
any.
did? Do you know who that was?
I believe, I don't, I was told that by the CHP, but I
Because
don't.
I try to research it and I can't come up
Right,
with anything.
it's really murky, but they did say they were going to do it in 2020. Now, there's certainly, the council can, as
Right.
part of the, through a motion recommending that be.
I don't know
added to
who
the legislative
advocates for
agenda.
us in the legislature, to be honest. I've never met that person. Do you know? I know there's oftentimes I'm at a loss in terms of what the city is getting behind in Sacramento and what the council decides to do. So I
really
wondered
should
if
be
maybe Mr. Bonnet knew who those people were, because I've never met them.
They really should take it up, because.
I'm just saying,
it
it's
is-
something that we need, if
Yeah.
people are interested in this is something that we can probably talk about as part of a legislative package, but I don't know.
Figure out who they are first.
Right.
Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I had.
Well, what I'd suggest then is, Ms. Martinez makes a great broad point about the city's relationship with pushing its legislative agenda in Sacramento. I actually just happened to have a conversation last week about this with Assemblymember Wendy Carrillo, and they're actually trying to figure out ways to get a better sense from Los Angeles about what our priorities are. And we were talking about actually maybe bringing together somewhat of a summit of the city council members and our LA delegation to get some face-to-face time on that, because I don't think we're particularly our best advocates on anything in Sacramento. So from what I've heard, let me try to summarize this, is that this is not legal in Los Angeles now, but there is certainly a growing sentiment to at least allow some of the taxi companies, certainly I've heard more sympathy towards the taxi companies than the TNCs, to be able to pilot this. I don't know that I'm a huge fan of that personally, but I certainly have heard that sentiment. However, in the meantime, the law is being violated by the TNCs, and there's a request from Mr. Blumenfield and others to start enforcing the law. So what I'd recommend, see if I can sort of split the baby here, is, or have two babies maybe, is to approve the Blumenfield motion, ask LAPD to start enforcing, and perhaps street use inspection as well, depending on the circumstances, whether or not the vehicles are parked or moving. But at the same time, amend the motion to ask City Attorney and CLA to report back to us on what steps would be necessary to create a pilot in the City of Los Angeles. That may be different legislative steps, but if you could, CLA and City Attorney, check in with the relevant state officials on what the best ways to effectuate that would be, and then we can consider to go on two tracks, if that's what the will. Second on that at all?
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, is there a way you can divide the two parts of that? Because I would oppose moving the motion forward, but I would support
Sure.
the second
Yeah.
part.
So bifurcate the question?
Of exploring how we get to a recommended framework of a pilot program.
Sure, yeah. Can we bifurcate it at this level, or do we have to just divide it in two parts at council?
Probably in council, huh?
Yeah. So, all right, so why don't we do this, is the committee will vote as I stated. It looks like it'll be 2-1, but then at council, we can bifurcate the issue so you can vote yes on one and no on the other?
That could work. I'd certainly rather do it here if it can legally be done.
I'm sorry, public comment has ended. This is a deliberation between the members. Mr. Clerk or Mr. City Attorney? Can we only make one recommendation to council? And we can have as many points to it, but can we only have one vote on the package?
Yes, the only way we could make two is if we had a majority and minority report.
Okay. So you want to do yours as a minority report that way?
Yeah, I
okay.
think we could do that.
Cool. All right. So that'll be the direction of the committee. 2 votes in favor of moving the Blumenfield motion forward with asks of City Attorney and CLA on what steps would be necessary to effectuate a pilot, and then a minority report which does only the second of those two things. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming down. That concludes that item. We will now go to item number 11.
Item number 11 is the DOT report relative to revised rules and procedures for preferential parking districts to exclude new developments with parking reductions.
Okay, before we start this item, I just want to note, we'll hear from staff first, but we have 4 public comments. I'm just going to acknowledge them so they know that we will be calling them up. Lynetta McElroy, David Sackman, Geraldine Sackman, and Romeral Melvo. But I believe that this item initiated as a Corret's motion, am I correct?
Yes.
Do you want to say something to open, and then we'll hear from staff?
I'll hear from staff.
Okay, all right.
Good afternoon, council members. Linda Evans, LADOT. Before you is a report back on the feasibility of excluding new developments that were granted parking reductions, specifically transit-oriented communities, TOCs, from the PPDs, Preferential Parking Districts. LADOT met with city planning and representatives from council offices to discuss the feasibility of excluding new developments within TOCs from preferential parking districts. LADOT has since received an opinion from the former Attorney General, which concludes that California Vehicle Code 22507 does not authorize cities to distinguish among residents based on the type of dwelling in which they live. in issuing residential parking permits. LADOT will continue to work with city planning for more viable solutions to TOCs, and I will entertain any questions or comments that you may have.
Thank you. You want to begin, or you want public comment next?
I probably should just briefly explain why we're looking at this. In my district in particular, we have some areas that are very tightly parked, in fact, over-parked. And so it doesn't mix well with projects that are under TOC where they're dramatically underparked. This may work fine in 20 years when fewer and fewer people are driving their own cars. Right now, you take a district where you have permit parking and you still can't find a parking space at night and have to drive blocks away from your home to find a space. And then you add a 100-unit building that provides half the parking that is required or actually needed. But I think it is generally a possibility that this planning is a scam and not a real impact on reducing the number of people that drive, because it's my belief that a certain number of people will buy a unit, rent a unit without a parking space, and then they'll just park in the neighborhood, putting more stress on it. So what we've tried to do is to deal with this based on addresses, which I have to assume is legal, that if your parking district doesn't include the commercial street, then that doesn't work. But if there are buildings in the middle of a preferential parking district in the residential area, they can do the same thing, and there's no way that they can be excluded by geography. So I'm looking for another way to deal with the fact that we're creating underparked buildings and not necessarily improving transit, but rather just making parking worse. And so the question is, how can we do that? I mean, one would obviously be not having TOC requirements that make sense 20 years from now, not now. But the other would be trying to deal with this permit parking issue. So if people rented a place without parking, they really wouldn't have the ability to have a car if they couldn't park in the permit parking district. So that's the concept.
So we will continue to have dialogue with city planning in the development of the TOCs, but in terms of the preferential parking district, the concern of excluding at this time is not appropriate for us.
Now, this is based on a former Attorney General's opinion?
Yes. Mike, if you would weigh in.
Former Attorney General Kamala Harris.
Could we get an opinion from our current Attorney General before we take that as gospel?
Senator Kamala Harris? That's what you were going to say. I'm kidding.
I was not going to call the senator. I was hoping for a second opinion from our current and more relevant Attorney General.
It's very difficult to get an Attorney General opinion. This was only 2 years old, and I can't believe that the opinion is going to be different regarding.
Well, we can ask.
You can ask.
We should ask. That's a good idea.
May as well. I'd be supportive of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
How long does it generally take to get an opinion from the general?
They first have to agree to do it.
Yeah, it's like the FAA. They don't necessarily answer your question.
They may not agree to do it.
Oh, wow.
Most of them are rejected, but a lot of
Yeah.
them. That's why I'm saying, I'm not, being flippant with you. It's just that since it's only 2 years old, they may decide, given all their other pressing matters. But it's certainly you can ask.
Well, I mean, we could make it a slightly different question. We can ask the question that was asked, but I think...
I think the question may be where there is a TOC that's been developed in a preferential parking district where they specifically did not build sufficient parking, can a city exclude that from a preferential parking requirements?
Right, because it obviously flies in the face of the whole concept of trying to reduce the number of vehicles when you just park them in the neighborhood.
Right.
But, sort of conversely, could we deny preferential parking permits to people who have ample parking in their driveway or garage and don't use it.
Well, I think we're going to have to do that if we go forward in terms of, if we're going with the Harris decision, we're going to have to treat everybody equally, so there's going to be a reduction. Everybody's going to, maybe one permit per unit of housing. I don't know how else if they have to be distributed equally. You can't distinguish between apartment dwellers or...
Yeah, no, what I was asking is if we're seeking to deny access to PPD permits based on people who do not have parking, it would only be fair to do the same to people who don't avail themselves of the parking they have.
That would be pretty hard to enforce, though. Probably wouldn't be very practical.
It is.
Well,
how would you ever figure out who has parking and who doesn't?
So can I ask another question?
If you have a garage.
So what are the options that we're left with then to control the demand of street parking? Do we have any real options? What are we left with?
Well, according to our rules, each resident, they could get 3 annual passes and 2 visitors. If we, change the rules to whatever deems appropriate.
You'd have to look at the district, how many parking spaces are actually available.
So maybe what we want to do is ask DOT to report back with options to customize each PPD based on local supply and demand factors, whether it's what Mr. Koretz is referring to or other things. So we're looking at it globally, but also re-ask the question, Mr. Koretz's question of the Attorney General.
And when we ask, we should explain to them the problem that we're trying to solve with that request.
Ken Husting, just real quickly on it's consistent with what Councilmember Bonin is saying. Whatever we do would have to be a global approach, so we can set a threshold. For instance, if there's an impact to a specific preferential parking district, say for instance it has a 90% or higher occupancy, then we can dictate that, for instance, maybe unit holders will only get 2 permits as opposed to the 3 annual permits. So I think we do have some discretion to modify the rules going forward in that manner. We would just need to make sure that we're uniform and that we don't violate the state law.
Right.
Okay. So could we do something like not allow new multifamily units to have permit parking when they move into a district that was already parked up, essentially?
I think
that would apply across the board. Anything that's new, you just don't allow it.
I'd like planning weigh in on this, because those are planning issues more than they are DOT issues, and I think we haven't heard from planning on this. I think that would be
So we do have somebody from planning here. I don't know if they are prepared to answer that question.
Well, we're not going to, I mean, we can take a stab at it, but time's running, so
no, we can investigate.
We're going to need a report back on this either way.
And we'll be more than happy to do that, work with planning and the city attorney to find out what our options are.
Yeah, we're happy to report back on the issue.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you also got to be sensitive to the fact that someone who's been living in a neighborhood for 30 years doesn't have any more claim to residency than someone who's been living there for 40 days.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
right. It's more of a target of the developer. If you're doing TOC, which I think in the heavily parked areas, TOC is a scam, because it doesn't stop people from having cars. It just stops them from paying for parking and having it on site. So they just have to figure out other ways to park. So if we don't have some way to limit their parking, it just makes parking worse and worse and doesn't do anything for transit.
Planning discussion.
We should always invite Don Shoup to come testify on these things.
Yeah, somehow you might guess we don't see eye to eye on this particular question.
West Side Urban Forum, you should have Mr. Koretz and Mr. Shoup for a panel discussion.
I think he's absolutely right about what things will be like 20 years from now. But we have to live through the 20 years first.
We got to keep it moving, so what else do we have to do on this?
We got some public comments, so why don't we ask Lynetta McElroy, David and Geraldine Stackman, and Mermeral Malvo to come on. Hello.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynetta McElroy, and I'm the captain of Grayburn Avenue Block Club, 2 long blocks, about 87 homes. I'm also the head of the western quadrant of North Leimert Park, which is about 300 homes. We are currently working to establish a PPD. The problem in our particular area is that we are inundated with so many TOC developments. You see, the TOC issue is not fair. It's already not fair. And here in Leimert Park, we have 2 buildings going up with no parking. Please understand, that has not occurred anywhere in this country, but it is happening in Leimert Park. So I think the issue is fairness versus unfairness. Now, when we talk about the opinion of Ms. Harris, the issue is that the opinion is not that it's current, it is that it is irrelevant. It talks about homeowners versus apartment dwellers. That's not the issue. Here in Leimert Park, we have apartment dwellers and homeowners working together for PPD. The issue is, again, the TOC developments and how unfairly they are planned by this city. And I ask you to please revisit that issue so that we can have fairness in our area. Thank you. And excuse me, I'd like to submit my letter.
Please, yeah. You can give it to the clerk. Okay. Who'd like to go next? Please, go ahead.
I'm giving my time to him. Okay, so this is my wife, Geraldine. And
You can each do a minute, but we can't trade time. It's council policy, sorry.
Okay, well, and Lynetta happens to be a very good friend of ours as well, although we have a different point of view on this. What's before the committee is changing the rules for PPDs. You have an opinion from the Attorney General that you cannot discriminate between on the basis of the type of housing. I agree with that, and as the city attorney knows, that's a binding opinion. What I submit, our point is that the current laws, both the old and the new, already distinguish illegally between single residence and multifamily dwelling, and that needs to be changed. I've submitted a brief which I encourage the city attorney to read, but basically this works like the Electoral College, where the few people in Iowa who take up a lot of space get as much say as all of us tens of million packed in California, and we saw what happened there. And I'm running out of time, but we'd like to explain what it's done in our district where it's turned it on its head. But I think we can suggest something that can take care of all these concerns.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything?
I just want to say that in our particular neighborhood in West LA, that it was there's a minority of homes in the area. There's a lot of multi-unit places, like where we live. There's a number of condos and apartments and things, but the homeowners got permitted, but then people in the surrounding areas were impacted by that. And with there being the newer buildings that are built have parking, but not enough to cover the people that are there. And so there's definitely a lot of musical chairs with cars at night, and pretty much anyone you talk to long enough, they will tell you they got a ticket or got towed, because at some point you just are the odd man out and your car is parked illegally somewhere.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Melville?
Yes, my name is Romero Melville. I'm a resident of Leimert Park. I asked the Department of Transportation reconsider its recommendation. Their report concludes that TOC buildings that use the reduced parking incentive cannot be excluded from preferred parking district. The justification is citing the former Attorney General opinion that says that PPDs cannot be excluded based on building type. Examples given were single family versus multifamily, low density versus high density. The subject of the Koretz-Harris-Dawson motion, however, seeks not to limit participation based on building type, but rather simply to reduce participation based upon whether a building took advantage of the incentive for reduced or no parking. It appears as if the parameters that was set up by the Attorney General are not being met here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for the testimony.
May I submit my written
You
comments to
certainly
the
may,
city
sir.
attorney?
Yes. What it looks like the direction of the committee will be is to ask LADOT and planning to report back on options to customize PPDs based on local supply and demand factors, and to request the city attorney re-ask the question of the current attorney general that was answered by the previous attorney general, as articulated by Mr. Koretz. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, that brings us to our final item, which is item number 10.
Item number 10 is the DOT report relative to creating permanent roadside memorial signs at the locations of fatal bus crashes in the city of Los Angeles.
Hello.
Hello. My name is Lauren Ballard. I'm a transportation planning associate at LADOT working in the Vision Zero group. I'm here today to report back on options for creating a permanent bicycle memorial sign program. I was last here in late 2018 to talk about a different memorial program, the Rainbow Halo, that I could also answer questions about, but it's a distinct program. Since 2003, more than 160 people have died while bicycling in traffic collisions in the city of Los Angeles. Family, friends, and members of the community often memorialize the victims of these fatal crashes with beautiful but temporary memorials like flowers, candles, photos, letters, and in the case of bicycle fatalities, the ghost bike. Councilmember Blumenfield's September 2018 motion asked LADOT to build on this tradition and create a city-sponsored, more permanent bicycle memorial sign program. To develop our recommendations, we researched similar programs in other cities and states and collaborated with Councilmember Blumenfield's staff to make sure that our proposals were meeting the intentions of the motion. As a Vision Zero city, Los Angeles recognizes that all people have the right to move around their communities safely. And in order to achieve Vision Zero, zero traffic deaths by 2025 in Los Angeles, it's essential that we help foster a culture of safety. We believe that the proposed memorial sign program will call attention to the issue of traffic fatalities, honor the victims of these preventable crashes, and help push us towards a culture of safety. The report and attachments that you have, hopefully in front of you, detail options for program sign content and design, sign placement and procedure, and discuss the cost of the program and the lifespan of the signs. The sign design and content include a message to drivers about safe driving behavior and a bicycle symbol and the text in memory of with the victim's name. The color and shape of the signs are dictated by the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, so we didn't have any creative liberties there. We crafted some optional messages that speak to general bicyclist motorist safety, such as watch your speed and give 3 feet, it's the law. Some other message options that may be used when they relate directly to the cause of the crash, such as don't text and drive, don't drink and drive, and right turns yield to bikes. It's our intention that families or a representative of the family with written consent from the family can request a sign through something like an online form. If the council is supportive of the recommendations that we've put forth in the report, we can go ahead and look into pursuing a pilot program that we could potentially launch in the 2019-2020 fiscal year. And in the meantime, we will be actively installing the Rainbow Halo Memorial Project. And we expect that we'll learn a lot from that. So I'm available for any questions or clarification.
Great, thank you. And I thank Mr. Blumenfield for the motion as well. This is an important thing to do. When we talk about Vision Zero and we talk about serious collisions and traffic fatalities, it tends to be very statistic-based and abstract, and it's important to personalize it so people know.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
Is there any room for pedestrian fatalities in the program?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the motion asked us to create a bicycle memorial sign program, but if you'd like us to explore.
I do. I mean, they just had another hit and run accident on Van Nuys and Burbank this past week with another, I'm not sure the condition of the pedestrian, but it's an ongoing issue. So, I mean, if there's room for pedestrian fatalities in the program, I'd like to explore that. I think it's important to talk about people who walk.
Yep.
and not have to die on their way to school.
Yeah, I think that we would be more than happy to pursue that, but it would be a different financial impact.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm totally in agreement with my colleague, Ms. Martinez, on that, and want to support this and want to echo that as a direction, part of the council's support for this. Also want us to think about, as we go through this first year, financing. I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea of potentially charging the victims a fee to replace the signs. That just strikes me as off. So what I'm going to recommend is we receive and file the report. We approve the creation of the Vision Zero Memorial Sign Program with the ask that it include pedestrians as well as cyclists, and direct LADOT to report back in 1 year with an evaluation that includes the number and location of signs installed, the number of victims' families engaged through the program, the costs incurred, options for maintenance of memorial signs in perpetuity, and options for recognizing additional victims of traffic collisions.
Great, thank you.
So, Councilmember Salida Reynolds, General Manager, just want to flag something that I would request the opportunity for the department to report back on a program for pedestrian memorials, because there's a huge order of magnitude difference between those two things. 150 pedestrians die on our streets every year. A much smaller number, 15 or so, of bicyclists do. And so in order for us to put together a memorial program that is respectful and on the same level as what we're suggesting for people who are killed while biking, because I agree with both of you, we would want to just consider what that would look like and figure out a way to best put it forward that's respectful of the difference in size. That the department, as you know, as all of you know, the sign shop that manufactures and puts out, hundreds of thousands of signs on an annual basis is under tremendous resource pressure to deliver things like OPD signs and keep up and maintain stop signs. So we may want to come up with a creative solution to pedestrian memorials that don't create an unrealistic expectation, knowing the resources that we have.
Sure. Well, we're asking that you include the pedestrians. You can report back on. That's not saying you absolutely, must do every single thing. I mean, we want you to do what you can and report back on what the limitations are and how to, what additional needs might be to make it happen.
You're asking us to open up the program to both. You're asking us to start a program for everyone, and then report back to tell you what we already know?
Tell us what additional needs you might have to make it happen.
Before we start the program.
What, if you have more requests than you have resources for?
Which we will.
Okay.
If we expand it, because there's a big difference between those two.
Then, I mean, there are many programs that during the course of the year you come back and say, hey, to do what we want, we need more money.
But you're saying you already know that.
I'm saying I know that now. So if we could, could we come back in the next could we come back over the next reasonable amount of time and sort of give you what that ask would be?
Sure. Yeah.
Means we're about to head into budget hearings and have those conversations. Sure. It seems timely. Yeah. I would just, given the enormous responsibility we feel to get this kind of a program right, I would not feel like I was doing my job if I agreed to start it, knowing, just sitting here today, I could tell you we need more resources to do it.
Right.
So I'd appreciate the opportunity to just come back and make that ask.
I think so. I actually think it's important for the program to be effective, that it actually include pedestrians as well.
Agreed.
And the fact that the need is so much greater in scale actually illustrates why. I think it's important for people to realize it's cyclists and pedestrians, and there's all sorts of vulnerabilities and victims. So we'd be supportive of that. Plus, I see Mr. Wesson now has a part-time job in the sign shop, so that's got to help.
You are welcome to visit the sign shop and help fabricate signs whenever you would like.
If I can pick the signs I get to fabricate, yes.
Absolutely. We aim to please.
I'm down. Cool. Okay. Mr. Bruins, do you have a revised recommendation on how you'd like us to proceed? I'm getting a look like you, like I got from her a few minutes ago.
I mean, I think the recommendation would be to allow DOT to proceed with the program as they've outlined and ensure that their report back accommodates the scale of the challenge needed to include pedestrians in the program.
Okay. I'm sold. All right. You know where we want to go?
I do.
Yes. Okay.
And we want to go there too.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
So that is the direction of the committee. Dan is very happy for your save on that one, Salita. And that finishes up our agenda, and we are adjourned. Thank you.